NASA. Everyone's heard of NASA, right? The National Aeronautics and Space Administration is an amazing federal agency that conducts space research and exploration, aeronautics research and development, constructs spacecraft and space stations, and does lots of other things. Since the 60 years since its creation, NASA has become the largest space organization on Earth. With 10 field centers, employs around 84,000 people, including contractors, and features many more facilities, research labs, factories, launch sites, offices, and tracking stations, spread over the United States and even abroad. But how many facilities are there, and what do they do? The NASA centers are divided into 3 categories: field centers, administrative centers, and manufacturing facilities. Let's take a look at the NASA administrative centers. Number 1. NASA Headquarters. You may have thought that the Kennedy Space Center or the Johnson Space Center is NASA's main headquarters, but you're wrong. Did you know that the NASA agency headquarters are in Washington, D.C.? That's right. It's located at 300 East Street Southwest, and this relatively low-rise office building is the headquarters of the NASA administrator and the agency's senior leadership team that report directly to Congress and the President. The building also houses an enormous concrete vault containing the historical archives of NASA's past, a vast array of books, documents, objects, and paperwork. A time capsule including documents and photographs from the glory days of Gemini, Apollo, and Mercury missions. Inside the vault are also hard drives containing pictures of the epic moon landings, and even Apollo flight plans. At number 2 is the Johnson Space Center. This space center has lots upon lots of functions. Located in Houston, Texas, it's the headquarters of the NASA Astronaut Corps. It has 44 buildings, from astronaut training centers, mock-up facilities, in-built ISS museum, engineering workshops, testing chambers for deep space exploration vehicles, and of course, Houston, the Mission Control Center, where flight controllers monitor all the spacecraft and International Space Station activities 24 hours a day, all days per year. Yes, even on Christmas Day this place is constantly manned, with 3 sets of rotating 8-hour shifts. But that's not all. There are 5 control rooms, each with an inner wall of 2-inch thick steel, to protect against hurricanes and any terrorist or sabotage attacks. Also at the Johnson Space Center is the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, the world's largest swimming pool, used for underwater astronaut training that simulates weightlessness, and many other things. As obvious, the center is named after U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson. There's also an amazing visitor center, called Space Center Houston, where you can get exclusive tours of all the areas of Johnson. How exciting! Now let's look at the NASA Field Centers. Coming up on number 3, is pretty much the most famous one, the John F. Kennedy Space Center. This great big NASA facility covers 144,000 acres, on the Florida coast of Merritt Island. You can probably guess what they have there, if you've been, of course. You have 15 seconds to guess all the buildings and features at KSC, then we'll cover the full extent of this amazing place. Did you guess all of them? Well, here's the big reveal. The Kennedy Space Center has 2 launch pads, Pad 39A and 39B. I'm sure you've noted the iconic VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building. This great building is where the pre-manufactured rocket stages come together to be fully assembled and rolled out to the launch pad. It's over 525 feet tall, or 160 meters, and covers 8 acres. It's so big that clouds have been known to form near the roof. Inside, there's nearly 100,000 tons of structural steel. The bay doors are so large they take 45 entire minutes to fully open or close. Near the VAB is the Launch Control Center. This is the main control center used to launch rockets from the Kennedy Space Center. The controllers administer and manage pre-flight preparations, and monitor critical procedures needed to launch a space shuttle and other rockets. The LCC also initiates the countdown clock and relays information to Houston. This control room has a proud history of launching the Saturn rockets during the space race, the entire Space Shuttle program, and is now renovated to manage the upcoming SLS launches. Stationed adjacent to the VAB, the Launch Control Center is also 3 miles away from the launch pads. It's constructed out of reinforced concrete and steel. Also in the area is the Orbiter Processing Facility. This building was used to refurbish the Space Shuttle and is now used to build the Boeing CST-100 Starliner. Near Pad 39A, a private space company, SpaceX, has its small factory located near its entrance. Have you ever wanted to know where the shuttle lands? Take a look at the shuttle landing facility. This super long runway stretches over 4 kilometers, and there's also a special crane off to the side, called the mate-demate device, which lifts the shuttle off its carrier aircraft when the shuttle landed somewhere other than Florida, usually due to bad weather. Oh, and by the way, the exciting visitor complex is located on NASA Parkway. This amazing museum and space theme park has lots of attractions. Experience the launch of a space shuttle from the inside, train like an astronaut, enjoy space food, have a fancy meal with real astronauts, and many more fun stuff. Along that same road is the 3 other buildings, the Administration Building, housing lots of office space. The Neil Armstrong Building, which has the Spacecraft Workshop No. 1, and operations and checkout facilities. This is where the iconic Apollo and shuttle astronauts exit to the Astrovan, as well as initially sleep in dormitories on the day before launch, and suit up and make flight preparations. The SSPF, or Space Station Processing Facility, is where the International Space Station itself was assembled and loaded into the cargo transfer containers. It's now used to manufacture future space stations and the Deep Space Gateway. Other industrial areas include the hypergolic fuel refineries and the liquid hydrogen and oxygen storage tanks. The Kennedy Space Center is the largest NASA space center in terms of employees, with over 13,000 people, mostly contractors. At number 4 is the George C. Marshall Space Flight Center. This is a big one, with 2 complexes. The main complex is located in Huntsville, Alabama, and comprises several technical buildings, offices and research laboratories, including the Payload Operations Center for the International Space Station. Other areas include and build mini factories that develop and build parts for the Space Launch System rocket. The center has a proud history of developing the Saturn V rocket, the Skylab space station, and the Hubble Space Telescope. It also manufactures parts for the Orion spacecraft, in addition to the European manufacturing facilities. The other complex, which is part of the Marshall Center, is located 400 miles southwest, in the French state of Louisiana, particularly 14 miles east of New Orleans. In the middle of this small area, near a steel mill complex, is the NASA Chris A. Hadfield Rocket Factory, also known as CARF. This enormous rocket factory is the main manufacturing facility for the majority of all the rockets made by NASA, built from scratch using steel and aluminum alloys. An arc furnace melts the metal and casts it into sheets. The steel is formed and welded into rocket tanks, which are vertically welded in any one of the two VABs. The largest of them is the South VAB. The finished rocket fuel tanks and core stage elements are shipped by barge to the Kennedy Space Center. The Chris Hadfield factory has a history of building the agency's first rockets, the Saturn V first stage, and the Space Shuttle external tank. The rocket factory complex has a luxury 4-story lobby, lined with decorative marble, 566 offices, 4 dormitories, 3 buffet restaurants, an underground cinema and leisure areas, including a workout gym. The Chris Hadfield factory employs 4,200 people, including Boeing and Lockheed Martin employees. This factory is one of the cleanest factories ever in service, as the floors are polished to a shine constantly. It's so big that you have to cycle to get around, or sometimes take the minecart trains around the factory. It can take around 9 minutes to walk from one end of the factory to the other, a distance of over 700 meters. What a workout! And good thing food stands are available for the workers. The Chris Hadfield factory is named after Chris A. Hadfield, a famous Canadian astronaut who made amazing contributions to the history of space exploration. At number 5 is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. This cool laboratory complex is located in Pasadena, California, and partly managed by the California Institute of Technology. This complex does incredible technology that flies beyond our solar system. It manufactures and launches satellites, probes and rovers to Mars, a lunar reconnaissance orbiter to the Moon, a spacecraft to Jupiter and beyond, and of course, the New Horizons spacecraft to Pluto. The laboratory complex has offices and an inbuilt mission control center dedicated to its specific spacecraft and rover missions. The facility also tests future spacecraft and aeronautical projects in various testing chambers and simulators. This space center incorporates the Deep Space Network, an organization that manages spacecraft and deep space tracking stations located around the globe. Yes, this means they are actually NASA tracking station facilities outside the United States. There's one in Australia, the Canberra Deep Space Communication Complex. And even in Europe, the Madrid Deep Space Communication Facility. These stations have lots of radio telescopes and radar antennae that track and control the position of satellites, space stations, manned spacecraft, interplanetary asteroids, and other deep space objects and observations. Let's take a tour of the Goddard Space Flight Center, located in Maryland and Virginia. This major facility is named after famous rocket engineer Robert Goddard, and it's the largest combined organization of scientists and engineers in the United States, dedicated to increasing knowledge of the Earth, the solar system, and the universe via observations from space. The Goddard Center is a major U.S. laboratory complex for developing and operating unmanned scientific spacecraft. It conducts scientific investigation, development and operation of space systems, and development of related technologies. The 10,000 scientists and engineers can develop and support a mission, and can design and build the spacecraft for that mission. Did you know that the center has a cool visitor center? But that's not all. It's free of charge. The complex even has a small launch site complex, the Wallops Flight Facility on the Virginia coast. This mini Kennedy Space Center clone is used to launch Antares rockets to the International Space Station.
Liftoff confirmed. Antares and the SS Gene Cernan now bound for the International Space Station.
The 7th center on our list starts with the 3 research centers, and this one is the NASA Glenn Research Center. Located in Ohio, the Glenn Research Center is a huge laboratory and office complex used for aircraft engine research. It's named after John Glenn, who was an American fighter pilot, astronaut and politician. The research center supports all of the agency's missions and major programs. It excels in researching and developing innovative technologies for both aeronautics and spaceflight. A multitude of NASA missions have included elements from GLAN, from the Mercury and Gemini programs, to the Space Shuttle program, and the International Space Station. The center also develops air-breathing, and in-space rocket engines, future cryogenic fuel, advanced communications, electrical power, energy storage and conversion, microgravity sciences, and advanced materials. At number 8 is the Langley Research Center. This research center existed during the era of the NASA predecessor, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, or NACA for short. It's the oldest NASA facility, with some buildings over 100 years old. The complex has focused primarily on aeronautical research, but has also tested space hardware at the facility, such as the Apollo lunar module. In addition, a number of the earliest high-profile space missions were planned and designed on-site. There is an enormous wind tunnel device used to test rocket aeronautics and also supersonic planes. Also on our list of NASA research field centers is the Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley, California. The center is named after Joseph Ames, a founding member of the NASA predecessor. The research and development complex was initially constructed to do wind tunnel research on the aerodynamics of propeller-driven aircraft. Since the creation of NASA, it was expanded to conduct research and technology in aeronautics, spaceflight, and information technology. It provides leadership in astrobiology, small satellites, robotic lunar exploration, intelligent and adaptive systems, and thermal protection. More famously, this space center has the most powerful supercomputer in the global space industry, nicknamed Pleiades. This cool machine is ranked the 13th most powerful computer ever, with a capacity of 10 petaflops of processing speed, 938 terabytes of RAM, 246,000 processing cores, and over 29 petabytes of SSD storage. This is around 10 million times more powerful than a typical $1,000 iMac. It also cost over $40 million to install, and its internet speed is the fastest in the United States, at over 58 gigabytes per second. At number 9 on our list, and last of the research field centers, is the Neil Armstrong Flight Research Center. It's an aeronautical research center operated by NASA, despite being adjacent to Edwards Air Force Base. It's the premier site for aeronautical research and operates some of the most advanced aircraft in the world. It is also the home of the shuttle carrier aircraft, a modified Boeing 747 designed to carry a space shuttle orbiter back to Kennedy Space Center if one landed at Edwards. It also supports the NASA Sophia aircraft, another modified NASA Boeing 747 aircraft with a German-made flying infrared telescope. At number 10 on the NASA centers is a famous one, sometimes known as Rocket Engine City, is the NASA Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. This enormous rocket engine test complex is used to test-run the newly manufactured rocket engines to make sure they run perfectly. NASA loves testing its engines, and it has no place better than Stennis. The mighty Saturn V rocket engines, the F-1, were tested at the B-2 test stand, whilst the Space Shuttle and Space Launch System RS-25 engines are tested at the A-1 structure. These test stands comprised of a huge reinforced concrete A-shaped structure, with high-strength steel to withstand the huge forces and acoustical energy of the exhaust plumes. A nearby reservoir of water and a pumping system supplies the rigs with thousands of tons of water to cool the test structures during operation, which can exceed 4,000 to 6,000 degrees. Quick fact: during the space race to the moon, the Soviets did not have this kind of large-scale engine testing facility, and many other factors caused their own moon rocket to keep exploding. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, then please thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and share. If you've never been to any NASA facility, I recommend that you visit the Kennedy Space Center as your journey's start. Check out their website on www.kennedyspacecenter.com to get tickets.